The camera slowly pans across the desolate remains of Millbrook General Hospital. Broken windows stare out like hollow eyes, and weeds push through cracks in the parking lot where ambulances once rushed to save lives. The autumn wind whistles through the abandoned corridors, carrying with it the echoes of screams that once filled these halls. In the small town of Millbrook, residents trusted Dr. Sarah Chun with their lives for 3 years. They lined up outside her office, grateful for a skilled surgeon willing to work in a forgotten corner of rural America. They had no idea that the woman saving them by day was hiding the darkest secret imaginable by night. What started as a story of medical miracles would become a nightmare that changed this community forever. This is a true story of how an entire town fell victim to a predator hiding behind a medical license, and the horrified discovery that their miracle doctor was actually conducting the most twisted experiment in modern medical history. The story begins in September 2018, when Dr. Sarachin first arrived in Millbrook, Connecticut. The town had been struggling for years with a critical shortage of medical professionals. Young doctors preferred the prestige and salary of big city hospitals, leaving rural communities like Millbrook desperately underserved. Chin appeared to be the answer to their prayers. She was a 34-year-old surgeon with impressive credentials from prestigious medical schools. During her interview with the hospital board, she presented herself as someone genuinely committed to helping underserved communities. Board Chairman Robert Mills later recalled being impressed by her passion and expertise. Dr. Chin seemed like exactly what we needed, Mills would later tell investigators. She was willing to work for half the salary we'd offered previous candidates, and she had this incredible knowledge of advanced surgical techniques. We thought we'd won the lottery. The hospital administrator, Janet Foster, was equally enthusiastic. Chen's references checked out, her medical license appeared valid, and she demonstrated remarkable surgical knowledge during her practical assessment. Within a week, she was performing her first operations at Millbrook General. What the hiring committee didn't know was that they had just welcomed a wolf into their fold. From her very first surgery, Dr. Sarah Chin displayed an almost supernatural level of skill. She successfully performed a complex heart surgery that veteran surgeons in neighboring cities had deemed too risky. The patient, 67-year-old farmer Henry Walsh, made a full recovery in record time. Word spread quickly through the tight-knit community. Chen's success rate was unprecedented, close to 99% even on the most challenging cases. Patients began traveling from surrounding towns, sometimes driving hours to be treated by the miracle doctor of Millbrook. But success came with strange quirks that the hospital staff began to notice. Chen insisted on working alone during critical procedures, often dismissing even experienced nurses from the operating room. She frequently worked through the night, performing emergency surgeries that other doctors would have scheduled for the following day. Night shift custodian Tom Rodriguez later reported seeing lights in the basement levels of the hospital during Chen's late-night surgeries, areas that were supposed to be in used storage. I asked Dr. Chen about it once, Rodriguez recalled. She got real defensive, said she needed extra space for specialized equipment. But something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. More troubling were the medical supply discrepancies. Pharmacy technician Lisa Park noticed unusually high consumption of anesthetics, surgical instruments, and blood products. When she brought these concerns to Chun, the doctor dismissed them as necessary for her complex procedures. But the most disturbing observations came from the patients themselves. Many reported strange dreams during surgery, vivid, terrifying nightmares that felt more real than typical anesthesia-induced hallucinations. Some woke up with unexplained soreness in areas unrelated to their procedures. Rebecca Walsh, the head night nurse and Henry Walsh's daughter, began keeping detailed notes about these anomalies. She had worked in larger hospitals before turning to Millbrook, and something about Dr. Chen's methods didn't align with standard medical practice. Patients were healing too fast. Walsh would later explain to federal investigators. Surgical incisions that should have taken weeks to heal were closing in days. At first, I thought it was just Dr. Chen's superior technique, but then I started noticing other things, things that didn't make medical sense. Despite these concerns, Chen's reputation continued to grow. Local news outlets featured stories about the small-town medical miracle. The mayor even proclaimed a Dr. Sarah Chen Appreciation Day to thank her for her service to the community. But beneath the surface, something far more sinister was taking root. The first crack in Dr. Chen's perfect facade appeared on a rain-soaked October evening in 2019. 16-year-old Marcus Rivera was rushed to Millbrook General after a devastating car accident on Highway 47. The teenager had suffered massive internal injuries, multiple fractures, and severe blood loss. The paramedics who brought him in whispered among themselves that they'd never seen someone survive such trauma. Dr. Chen immediately took charge, ushering Marcus into surgery with an urgency that surprised even the emergency room staff. She spent nearly 8 hours in the operating room, emerging finally at dawn with blood-stained scrubs and an exhausted expression. "It was touch and go," she announced to Marcus's parents, Maria and Carlos Rivera. "But your son is going to be fine. Better than fine. Actually, he's going to make a full recovery." The Riveras wept with relief and gratitude. Their boy was alive. But as Marcus began his recovery, strange details emerged that would haunt the family for months to come. The teenager claimed to remember fragments of his surgery, impossible under general anesthesia. He described hearing Chen's voice giving instructions to people who weren't supposed to be in the operating room. There were others, Marcus told his parents during a quiet moment 3 days after surgery. "I could hear Dr. Chen talking to someone else, but when I asked the nurses about it, they said she operated alone." More disturbing were the physical anomalies. When Marcus's bandages were changed, his surgical scars didn't match the official medical records. The documented procedures showed incisions along his abdomen and chest, but Marcus had additional scarring on his back and neck, areas that shouldn't have required surgical intervention based on his injuries. Most puzzling of all were the x-rays. Marcus's bones had healed with unusual speed and strength. Metal implants that weren't mentioned in any of his medical documentation appeared in follow-up scans. When his parents questioned Chun about these discrepancies, she dismissed their concerns as confusion from trauma and pain medication. "Recovery affects everyone differently," Chen assured them with her trademark confident smile. "Marcus is healing beautifully. These irregularities are just signs of his body's remarkable resilience." But Marcus knew something was wrong. He had persistent nightmares about being conscious during surgery, watching Chan perform procedures that weren't meant to save his life. In these dreams, she was documenting everything with cameras and recording equipment, treating him like a test subject rather than a patient. His parents initially attributed these nightmares to post-traumatic stress, but Marcus became increasingly insistent that they were memories, not dreams. He began researching Dr. Chen online, trying to find information about her background and training. What he discovered would change everything. Marcus found inconsistencies in Chen's public biographical information. Different medical directories listed conflicting details about her education and previous employment. Most disturbing of all, he discovered a death certificate for a Dr. Sarah Chun who had died in a car accident in California 5 years earlier. The same Dr. Sarah Chun whose credentials matched their small-town surgeon exactly. When Marcus shared this information with his parents, they initially dismissed it as a coincidence. But doubt had taken root. Maria Rivera began asking more pointed questions during Marcus's follow-up appointments, pressing Chen for details about her medical training and background. Chen's responses became increasingly evasive and defensive. She claimed that privacy concerns prevented her from discussing her personal history. When the Riveras persisted, she suggested they find another doctor if they weren't satisfied with Marcus's care. The family was caught in an impossible position. Marcus was healing remarkably well, better than any medical professional had predicted. But the growing evidence suggested that their miracle doctor might not be who she claimed to be. As autumn turned to winter, Marcus's questions multiplied. He noticed that other patients were sharing similar experiences: unexplained scarring, impossible recovery rates, and disturbing dreams that felt more like suppressed memories. The teenager began documenting everything, creating a detailed file of inconsistencies and anomalies surrounding Dr. Sarah Chun. He didn't yet understand the full scope of what he had uncovered, but he knew that their trusted surgeon was hiding something terrible. What do you think is really happening so far? Share your theories in the comments. Rebecca Walsh had worked as a nurse for 12 years, including 5 years at prestigious Boston Medical Center. She understood hospital protocols, medical procedures, and the rhythms of legitimate health care. When she returned to her hometown of Millbrook to care for her aging father, she never expected to encounter the most disturbing medical mystery of her career. It started with small inconsistencies that only someone with Walsh's experience would notice. Patient charts that didn't quite align with post-surgical observations. Medical supply orders that exceeded what should be necessary for documented procedures. And most troubling of all, Dr. Chen's insistence on absolute privacy during critical operations. Walsh began keeping detailed notes about these anomalies in a private journal. As head of the night shift, she had access to areas of the hospital that day's staff rarely visited. It was during one of these quiet midnight rounds that she made a discovery that would expose the horrifying truth about Dr. Sarah Chun. On December 15, 2019, Walsh was conducting her routine security check of the hospital's lower levels when she noticed light emanating from beneath a door in sub-basement B, an area that had been marked as condemned storage for over 2 years. Hospital maintenance records showed no authorized electrical work in that section, and the space was included in regular cleaning schedules. Walsh's nursing training had taught her to investigate irregularities that could impact patient safety. Using her master key, she unlocked the door and descended a narrow staircase that she didn't remember from her childhood visits to the hospital. What she found defied explanation. The condemned storage area had been converted into a sophisticated medical laboratory. Surgical lights illuminated multiple operating tables, equipped with monitoring equipment that was far more advanced than anything in the hospital's official operating rooms. Refrigeration units lined one wall, their contents hidden behind frosted glass doors. But it was the documentation that revealed the true horror of Dr. Chen's activities. Detailed journals filled multiple filing cabinets, each containing meticulous notes about unauthorized procedures performed on unconscious patients. Chen had been using routine surgeries as opportunities to conduct experimental modifications on human subjects. The journals described tissue harvesting, organ manipulation, and the implantation of devices designed to enhance human physical capabilities. Walsh discovered that Chun had been sedating patients beyond medical necessity, keeping them unconscious for hours longer than their documented procedures required. During this extended unconsciousness, she performed unauthorized experiments while carefully documenting the results. The photographs were the most disturbing evidence. Chun had been systematically documenting her work with clinical precision, treating her human subjects like laboratory specimens. Images showed patients with extensive modifications that weren't reflected in their official medical records. Among the files, Walsh found detailed profiles of nearly every patient Chun had treated since arriving in Millbrook. Each file contained before and after photographs, surgical notes describing unauthorized procedures, and follow-up observations tracking the long-term effects of her experiments. Most shocking of all were the financial records hidden in a locked drawer. Chen had been selling harvested human organs and tissue samples to black market buyers, using the profits to fund increasingly sophisticated equipment for her underground laboratory. Walsh realized that she had stumbled upon evidence of systematic medical torture disguised as miraculous healing. Every patient who had trusted Dr. Chen with their life had unknowingly become a test subject in her twisted research project. But as Walsh gathered evidence to report to authorities, she discovered that Chen's deception ran even deeper than medical fraud. Hidden among the financial documents were identity papers revealing Chen's true identity. The person performing surgeries at Millbrook General Hospital wasn't Dr. Sarah Chun. It was Dr. Michael Harrison, a disgraced surgeon who had lost his medical license 5 years earlier after being caught conducting illegal human experiments at a private research facility in California. Harrison had assumed the identity of the real Dr. Sarah Chun after her death in a car accident, using her credentials to secure employment at hospitals where background checks were less thorough. Millbrook General, desperate for qualified surgeons, had hired him without conducting a comprehensive verification of his identity. The journals revealed that Harrison had been planning this deception for years, carefully studying Chen's background and mannerisms to create a convincing false identity. His transition to living as Sarah Chun wasn't just medical fraud. It was the perfect cover for continuing his illegal human experimentation research. Walsh spent the entire night photographing evidence with her personal camera, knowing that she was documenting one of the most disturbing cases of medical abuse in modern history. But as dawn approached, she realized that reporting her findings through official channels might not be enough. Harrison had been operating undetected for over a year, which meant he had likely compromised other staff members or had access to hospital administration records. Walsh needed to find a way to expose him that wouldn't give him an opportunity to destroy evidence or disappear. As she prepared to leave the secret laboratory, Walsh noticed fresh surgical instruments laid out on one of the operating tables. A patient chart indicated that Harrison was planning another unauthorized procedure that very night. She had to act quickly. The next patient was scheduled to be her own father. Thank you for staying with us. The most shocking part is still coming. Rebecca Walsh faced an impossible choice. She had discovered evidence of systematic medical abuse that had victimized dozens of patients, but her father, Henry, was scheduled for surgery with Harrison in less than 12 hours. Going to the police would take time she didn't have, and Harrison had demonstrated a sophisticated ability to cover his tracks. Instead, Walsh made a decision that would put her own life at risk. She would gather additional evidence while simultaneously sabotaging Harrison's planned procedure on her father. Throughout the morning of December 16th, Walsh carefully documented Harrison's preparations for her father's surgery. The procedure was supposed to be a routine gallbladder removal, but Harrison's secret notes revealed much more extensive plans. He intended to harvest tissue samples, implant monitoring devices, and test experimental enhancement procedures on the unconscious 70-year-old farmer. Walsh contacted her father and convinced him to delay the surgery by claiming she had noticed irregularities in his preoperative blood work. Henry Walsh trusted his daughter's medical expertise and agreed to postpone the procedure while she conducted additional tests. This bought Walsh time to implement a plan that would expose Harrison while protecting future victims. She reached out to investigative journalist Sarah Martinez at the Hartford Courant, a reporter known for exposing medical malpractice. Walsh provided Martinez with photographs and documentation from Harrison's secret laboratory, along with detailed testimony about the systematic abuse of patients. But Martinez needed more than testimonial evidence to publish such serious accusations. She required verification from medical experts and cooperation from law enforcement agencies. While Martinez began her investigation, Walsh took even more dangerous action. She installed hidden cameras in Harrison's secret laboratory, hoping to capture video evidence of his illegal activities. The cameras captured footage that would later be used as key evidence in Harrison's prosecution. On the night of December 18th, Harrison performed an unauthorized procedure on 45-year-old construction worker Dave Sullivan, who had been admitted for routine hernia repair. The video showed Harrison keeping Sullivan unconscious for over 4 hours while performing extensive unauthorized surgery. He harvested tissue samples, implanted electronic monitoring devices, and conducted experimental bone modifications, all while meticulously documenting his work for research purposes. But Harrison wasn't working alone. The footage revealed that he had been collaborating with at least 2 other individuals who assisted with his most complex procedures. These accomplices weren't hospital employees. They appear to be private contractors who help with the most illegal aspects of Harrison's research. Walsh realized that she had uncovered not just individual medical fraud, but an organized network of people conducting illegal human experimentation. Harrison was part of a larger operation that was using small hospitals as cover for systematic abuse of vulnerable patients. When Martinez's article was published on December 22nd, it sent shockwaves through the medical community and law enforcement agencies. The Hartford Courant's expose included photographic evidence, victim testimonies, and expert analysis confirming that Harrison had been conducting illegal human experiments on unconscious patients. Federal authorities immediately launched a full investigation. The FBI raided Millbrook General Hospital and Harrison's secret laboratory, seizing hundreds of files, computer records, and physical evidence of systematic medical abuse. But when agents arrived to arrest Dr. Sarah Chun, they discovered that Michael Harrison had already fled. Hospital security footage showed Harrison leaving the building at 3:47 a.m. on December 22nd, just hours before the FBI raid. He had loaded multiple boxes of equipment and documentation into a van, suggesting that he had been monitoring news coverage and preparing for escape. The investigation revealed the full scope of Harrison's crimes. Over 18 months, he had performed unauthorized procedures on 127 patients, ranging from minor tissue harvesting to extensive surgical modifications. Many victims had no idea they had been subjected to experimental procedures. Medical experts who examined Harrison's documentation describe his work as systematic torture disguised as medical treatment. The long-term health effects on his victims were still being assessed, but preliminary examinations revealed that many patients had been permanently altered by his experiments. Most disturbing of all was the discovery that Harrison had been documenting his work as part of a larger research project funded by unknown private investors. His journals referenced other locations where similar experiments were being conducted, suggesting that Millbrook was just one site in a network of illegal human experimentation facilities. If you're still here, get ready. The final truth will change everything you thought you knew. The FBI manhunt for Michael Harrison led investigators down a rabbit hole of medical fraud and organized crime that stretched across multiple states. What they discovered was far more terrifying than a single rogue doctor conducting illegal experiments. Harrison had been part of an international network of disgraced medical professionals who were conducting unauthorized human research for private clients willing to pay millions for experimental procedures and enhancement technologies. Millbrook General Hospital was just one of dozens of facilities being used as cover for systematic human experimentation. The investigation revealed that Harrison's patients hadn't been random victims. He had been specifically targeting individuals based on genetic markers, physical characteristics, and medical histories that made them valuable test subjects for specific experiments. Marcus Rivera, the teenager who had first suspected something was wrong, discovered that his car accident hadn't been random either. Traffic investigators found evidence that his vehicle had been tampered with, causing the crash that brought him to Harrison's operating table. The experimental procedures performed on Marcus were part of a research project focused on enhancing human strength and recovery rates. Rebecca Walsh's investigation had uncovered documentation showing that Harrison was being paid substantial sums for successfully completing specific experimental procedures. Each patient represented a potential payday of hundreds of thousands of dollars if the experiments yielded usable data for his clients. The scope of the conspiracy became clear when authorities discovered Harrison's complete financial records. Over 18 months, he had earned over $2.3 million from selling experimental data, harvested organs, and tissue samples to buyers around the world. But the most horrifying discovery was yet to come. In January 2020, FBI agents raided a storage facility that Harrison had rented under a false name. Inside, they found refrigeration units containing hundreds of tissue samples, organs, and biological specimens that had been harvested from his victims. Many of the samples were labeled with codes that corresponded to specific research projects being conducted at facilities in other countries. The investigation revealed that Harrison's clients included private research companies, wealthy individuals seeking enhancement procedures, and even foreign governments interested in developing enhanced soldiers and intelligence operatives. Harrison had been documenting everything with scientific precision, creating detailed reports on the effectiveness of various experimental procedures. These reports were being sold to clients who used the information to refine their own human experimentation programs. Most shocking of all was the discovery of Harrison's ultimate goal, His journals revealed plans to establish a permanent research facility where he could conduct long-term experiments on subjects who would never be released. He had been using the profits from his Millbrook operations to purchase land in remote areas where he could build a private laboratory capable of housing dozens of experimental subjects. The manhunt for Harrison intensified when investigators realized that he posed an ongoing threat to public safety. His expertise in assuming false identities meant he could potentially establish new operations at other medical facilities. The breakthrough came in March 2020, when Harrison was arrested at a small hospital in rural Oregon. He had been working there for 6 weeks under yet another false identity, preparing to resume his experimental procedures on new victims. Harrison's arrest revealed the final pieces of conspiracy. His personal records contained detailed information about other members of the network, leading to additional arrests across multiple states and countries. During his interrogation, Harrison showed no remorse for his crimes. He insisted that his research was advancing medical science and that his victims should be grateful for their contributions to human enhancement technology. These people lived meaningless lives, Harrison told investigators. I gave their suffering purpose. My research will eventually benefit all of humanity. The psychological evaluation revealed that Harrison genuinely believed his work was noble and necessary. He had convinced himself that his victims were volunteers in advancing human evolution, even though none of them had consented to the procedures. The trial of Michael Harrison became one of the most closely watched medical malpractice cases in recent history. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence of systematic human experimentation, organ trafficking, and medical fraud spanning multiple years and jurisdictions. Victim testimony revealed the lasting trauma that Harrison's experiments had inflicted. Many of his victims required additional surgeries to remove unauthorized implants and correct modifications that were causing ongoing health problems. Marcus Rivera, now 19 years old, testified about the psychological impact of discovering that his trusted doctor had been using him as a test subject. I still have nightmares about being conscious during surgery, watching Dr. Chun or Harrison treat me like a laboratory animal, he told the jury. Rebecca Walsh received recognition from law enforcement agencies for her courage in exposing Harrison's crimes. Her decision to investigate the anomalies she noticed had prevented countless additional victims and exposed an international network of medical criminals. Rebecca Walsh's actions saved lives. FBI Special Agent Patricia Moore stated during the trial, without her investigation, Harrison would still be operating, and dozens more victims would have suffered. Harrison was ultimately convicted on 247 federal charges, including human trafficking, organ trafficking, medical fraud, identity theft, and systematic assault. He was sentenced to multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. But the investigation didn't end with Harrison's conviction. Federal authorities discovered that Harrison's network had been operating for over a decade, with similar operations at hospitals across the United States and internationally. The case led to a comprehensive review of medical licensing procedures and background check requirements for healthcare professionals. The residents of Millbrook were left to grapple with the reality that their trusted doctor had been systematically victimizing their community for over a year. Many patients required ongoing medical treatment to address the long-term effects of Harrison's unauthorized procedures. The abandoned Millbrook General Hospital stands today as a reminder of how easily trust can be exploited by those willing to hide behind professional credentials. The building remains empty, too associated with trauma for the community to consider reopening it as a medical facility. Marcus Rivera channeled his experience into advocacy work, becoming a spokesperson for medical patient rights and helping to develop stronger protections for rural communities that are vulnerable to medical fraud. Rebecca Walsh returned to working at larger medical facilities, but she continues to train other nurses to recognize the warning signs of medical abuse and fraud. The case of Michael Harrison serves as a chilling reminder that evil can hide behind the most trusted professions in our society. His ability to deceive an entire community while conducting systematic human experimentation represents one of the most disturbing medical fraud cases in modern history. The Case of the Fake, Dr. Sarachin reminds us that evil can hide behind the most trusted faces in our communities. Michael Harrison is now serving multiple life sentences, but the psychological scars he left on Millbrook may never heal. The investigation into Harrison's network of medical criminals is ongoing. Federal authorities believe that similar operations may still be active at other medical facilities, particularly in rural areas where background checks are less thorough and oversight is limited. If you suspect medical fraud or abuse, contact your state medical board immediately. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong about your medical treatment, don't hesitate to seek a second opinion or report your concerns to authorities. What do you think about this case? Have you ever had suspicions about someone in a position of trust? Share your thoughts in the comment below. And don't forget to subscribe for more shocking true crime stories that will keep you awake at night. Hit that notification bell, because you never know what dark secrets we'll uncover next. The truth is often stranger and more terrifying than fiction. And sometimes the people we trust most are the ones we should fear.